Right now, get ready for pop quizzes and recess. School is back in session. However, wavering guidance regarding vaccines and masking combined with the return to in-person learning this fall is putting educators in a tough spot.
So the summer's been good from an energy perspective, but I'm extremely concerned about what's going to happen in the fall.
How teachers are coping with the pressures of returning to the classroom after more than a year of learning online. And heading back to school often brings a flood of emotions. This year, seeing peers and teachers after being apart for so long may be more stressful than usual.
I think for kids, it is a struggle because, so much of their being is just being social and being connected.
How experts say parents can help their children if they think they're struggling with social anxiety. Plus, back to school shopping is expected to cost families a pretty penny this year, and finding some supplies may not be so easy.
By taking 5 to 10 minutes and just looking for savings, it's going to save you money 9 times out of 10.
How you can save money while shopping for your kids. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Fox 43 News, Book Smart, Back to School in Central Pennsylvania. I'm Matt Maisel. Over the next hour, we'll be taking a closer look at why the return to school this year will be once again different. We'll hear from teachers and school administrators about why they're excited to be back in person, the policies they have in place to ensure everyone stays safe, and the hiccups they anticipate might occur along the way. We'll also hear from students to learn what the return to in-person education means to them. We'll address the biggest concerns among parents, including the plans in place if there's an outbreak in school and how to help your children re-socialize after spending so much time away from their peers. Before we continue, though, we want to point out the QR code in the bottom right corner of your screen. If at any point throughout this broadcast you want more information about what you're hearing, all you have to do is scan that code with the camera app on your smartphone, and you'll be taken to a special section of fox43.com. We'll have all the information you need to be informed, as well as the specific re-entry plans for school districts in your area. There is no doubt that the past year and a half has been difficult for everyone. The pandemic changed all of our lives almost overnight. So let's take a look back to see how we got to where we are now and why the return to school this fall will be so unique. On Friday, March 13th of 2020, schools, businesses, and places of recreation across Pennsylvania and the country closed their doors in response to the COVID-19 outbreaks.
Where we see evidence of exposure to COVID-19, the Commonwealth has taken very decisive action. We've closed public schools, we've closed all schools and early learning centers, both in public and private sector schools in both Montgomery and Delaware counties. We're prohibiting visitors from entering senior care and long-term care facilities, and if you saw the President's press conference, he's doing the same thing on a national level. We've closed government offices.
The pandemic disrupted every aspect of life as we knew it. How we worked, how we learned, and how we interacted with each other. Events were canceled and businesses turned their lights off, not knowing the next time they might flip the signs on their doors to read open. At home, parents had to adjust working remotely while their children learned virtually instead of in the classroom, all to limit the damage caused by a rapidly spreading coronavirus.
The goal is always to keep Pennsylvanians safe. We're not acting simply for the sake of acting.
The first days of that shift were difficult, mostly emphasized by people being adaptable and getting through the rapid change in lifestyle together. Educators grappled with issues of their own in the beginning as well.
Our top priority is keeping students and school communities safe. So the spread of the coronavirus has required everyone to work within rapidly changing circumstances.
Technology was the first order of business, as teachers and students learned how to use software so that they could be together, even when they were miles apart. Administrators had to figure out ways to expand school programs so that they could reach students in their homes, including delivering food to those who were dependent on a daily school lunch. Students also faced an intensified challenge, adapting to remote learning at the onset of the pandemic by the loss of traditional in-person support systems. Now, just about 17 months after students were pulled from the classroom and stay-at-home orders began, officials are doing everything they can to get students back.
We can and we must open schools this fall, full time. It's better for our children's mental and emotional well-being, and we can't afford another year out of the classroom.
The sudden shift that changed the way we live our lives nearly 17 months ago makes the return to the classroom this fall unique and unlike any other we've seen before. For students, it may be the first time they're sitting at a desk, surrounded by their peers, after spending so much time social distancing. For teachers, the first time in recent memory, they've had to stand at a chalkboard or hand out paper copies of a quiz. For school staff and administrators, the first time greeting students as they walk in the door as the school bell rings. Going back to school this fall, we'll have a lot of those first time in a long time moments. And with the pandemic still lingering, the return to the classroom may be strange. But one thing that students, parents, teachers, and school faculty have in common is that they're all in it together. Now, many school districts are left to come up to their own COVID-19 safety plans for students and staff this fall. Teachers say that puts them in a tough spot. Fox 43 spoke with a group of educators about their concerns going into this school year. It's our Family First with Fox 43. From the Zoom room to the classroom, teachers' resiliency has been on display throughout the COVID-19 pandemic.
But you have to have your cameras on, so can you please turn your cameras on, my love?
And for the last year, Fox 43 has followed around these educators at Susquehanna Township. Now, as they get ready to head back to school, we met with Megan Hampshire, Curry Snell, Rob McDonald, Joe Heaton, and Steve Sexsmith once again.
How do each of you feel where you're at right now?
So the summer's been good from an energy perspective, but I'm extremely concerned about what's going to happen in the fall.
At Susquehanna Township, policies are still changing. We spoke outside because of a mandatory mask policy inside at the time. 1 week later, though, the school board reversed course and masks became optional.
I felt like I was in a really good place, energy-wise, mentally-wise. And then I got that email that said we had to do masks, and it was like instantaneous. It was almost like I just went back to a different place immediately, mentally. Like it just crashed my hopes for the year. I mean,
Sounds like PTSD.
It almost is.
We've spent our whole careers learning how to read faces. When you do it for a while, it's real easy to read that big, huge question mark on somebody's face. It's very hard to read a question mark like that. You can't see it.
Even though it's challenging as it is, at least there's that contact, like you said, that engagement. Mm-hmm. So if you had to take the lesser of the two evils, it would be in person with math.
Even with Delta kind of going about, do you feel safer this year going into a school setting?
There is no safe. There is the perception that I am less at risk. Nobody guaranteed us 0 cases. Mm-hmm. Let's stop trying to make it so that we're going to have people who get sick. There are going to be things that are going to happen, and we're going to have to adapt and adjust and move forward the best we can.
And what happens then is at the center of these teachers' frustration. The Pennsylvania Department of Education has left all COVID-related decisions in the hands of the districts with little to no guidance.
The department's guidance has been very clear that they are to follow the CDC guidance and incorporate that into their health and safety plans.
What more do teachers in general want to see in terms of guidance that maybe you haven't received?
Just some guidance. For me, it's typical of them. I mean, no matter what it is, COVID, state testing, you name it, they do the bare minimum at the last minute.
At the last minute. So I think there will be guidance. I think it'll come the day before school starts.
If you do a blanket type of statement for across the state, you're treating everyone the same and the conditions can be very different.
We asked the PDE if they would be open to regional guidance. They said schools can choose to do so themselves.
At the end of the day, regardless of anything that goes on, we're here just to try to help these kids become better people.
Well, last school year was one of the most disrupted in recent memory, creating new challenges for both students and educators. Although it ended with rising vaccination rates and even some in-person outdoor graduation ceremonies, studies show that the overall impact on those in the classroom was significant. There is no doubt the pandemic brought on a variety of challenges for those in the classroom. Many educators agree that the quality of education students received while learning remotely just wasn't on par with what they would have gotten through in-person lessons.
The two greatest concerns are social and emotional wellness of students, and also mitigating any of those academic gaps that students may have occurred for students over this past year.
Whether it's missing out on a chemistry experiment in a lab or getting the chance to ask a teacher that quick one-on-one question, students missed out on a lot of educational opportunities. But can we quantify the effects of that unfinished learning? Analysis by consulting firm McKinsey & Company showed that the impact of the pandemic on K-12 students was significant. Research found that for the 2020-2021 school year, students were testing 10 points below average in math and 9 points below average in reading when compared to students from previous years. Study authors estimate that this translates to about 5 months worth of learning for math and 4 months of reading comprehension, and that this lost learning could have much larger implications down the line. The study implies that unless steps are taken to address unfinished learning, today's students could earn an estimated $49,000 to $61,000 less over their lifetime. This translates to the potential for a $188 billion impact on the United States economy every year as these students begin to enter the workforce. All this due to the impact of the pandemic on schooling. So what's being done to help students make up for that lost learning? Dr. Sherry Smith, the director of the Pennsylvania Bureau of School Support, says that the Department of Education is providing schools with specific guidance on how to use resources that they already have to shrink learning gaps.
Making sure that they provide after-school programs, summer programs, tutoring programs, and integrate into their classrooms additional lessons to support our students and hopefully overcome any of those loss of learning in this coming year.
That $188 billion impact may seem like a huge number, but it's just a hypothetical, the potential impact that lost learning could have down the line. And it's not to say that students necessarily slipped backwards and lost knowledge. The majority simply learned that they otherwise would have. The reality of the here and now is that the last school year, most students weren't given the opportunity to complete all the learning that they would have during a typical year. With students soon heading back to school and COVID-19 cases rising, parents are facing a difficult decision whether or not to send their kids back. Fox 43's Paula Beoso spoke to parents who expressed both concern and relief that their kids will be headed back to the classroom.
When the pandemic started back in early 2020, Candace King had to cut hours as a medical technician to focus on her kids.
With my kids, it was really hard to pick up shifts.
Candace has a 17-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 10-year-old. Her 17 and 13-year-old have special needs.
With my son, when I did pick up shifts, that he wasn't attending school, so I would have to go home and wake him up because he didn't even go online to do school that day. Like, he would just sleep when I was at work.
Most days she felt like pulling her hair out.
Trying to help them at home and do school, and you just do what you have to do. As a mom, you do what you have to do.
Candace says it was especially hard for her son to adjust to learning from home.
It's just hard for him at home, like to separate the two. At home is home and school is school.
She says she's anxious about the new school year.
I hope my kids can get back to learning the way they're supposed to learn. I'm nervous. I'm nervous with the numbers rising.
And even through the ups and downs, online school has never been a thought for Candace.
With my kids having the special needs that they have, they need teachers.
For Matt Dorgan, online school was a learning curve. He says it took his 15-year-old son time to adjust.
It was definitely a struggle to kind of get him to get on that regiment every day, to get on the computer, sign in, do your work, when you didn't have that structure that you're so used to every day.
Matt says working from home made it easier to make sure that his kids were on top of their schoolwork.
So I knew, okay, they're going to be in a class. I'll go take care of this meeting. When they're supposed to be doing their work, I'll kind of make sure I'm a little bit free to be able to do that.
He says he's looking forward to his son going back to in-person classes.
It's not just what they're learning in school and history and math and all that. It's all the life skills that they're learning by being in that social environment that they're not getting if they're remote.
In York, Paula Beoso, Fox 43 News.
When the pandemic started in March of 2020, schools essentially had to shut down and go remote overnight. Students became virtual learners immediately. Now, with almost every school set to reopen for in-person learning this fall, a growing number of parents are choosing to keep their kids learning at home. Throughout the pandemic, virtual learning was the safest option for both students and teachers. Full-time remote learning, however, resulted in children spending days, sometimes even weeks at home, prompting some parents to take matters into their own hands. The formation of so-called pandemic pods became a rising trend as a do-it-yourself approach to restarting students' academic progress and social lives after months of lockdowns and stay-at-home orders. In these small pods, families would group together similarly aged children and share curriculum and do activities together as well.
We did accomplish the day-to-day activities that their teachers assigned, whether it be just counting exercises or, arts and crafts, reading exercises, reading prompts. But we would also pair that with just a lot of playtime.
Ryan Montbleu facilitated pod education for a group of preschool and kindergartners during the 2020-21 school year. He says that for students, one of the biggest benefits of pod education was the social aspect of learning in a group.
If more than anything else, what the kids in my pod were able to benefit from was like being able to socialize, being together, learning together, and not being at home alone, during a pandemic.
The pods also served as a form of childcare desperately needed by some parents as they continued to work from home.
So that they could still pursue their full-time jobs without having to interrupt their daily schedules, whether it be meetings or just regular work, by having to also facilitate their kids' education.
While many of those parents are thrilled to return to in-person learning this fall, an increasing amount are continuing to look into homeschooling.
People are looking for options. They want a different option. They've seen a side that they don't like, of other schools, of the school system in general, private and public.
According to data released by the United States Census Bureau, the number of households choosing to homeschool their children has nearly doubled, increasing from 5.4% in March of 2020 when the pandemic started to 11.1% in September 2020 at the start of last school year. That leap is a clear indication that parents were seeking solutions that would reliably meet their health and safety requirements, as well as their children's educational needs.
It's really, the incentive is just for kids to be able to learn the best way they can and progress into the best adults and the best of versions of themselves that they can be.
The same Census Bureau data shows homeschooling rates are increasing even faster across different race groups and ethnicities. In households where census respondents identified as Black or African American, the percentage of those homeschooling their children increased nearly 5 times from the end of the 2019 school year to the beginning of the 2020 school year, to more than 16%. Whether masking will be required continues to be a hot topic as we draw closer to the start of the school year. Coming up, the policies of some of the major districts in our area. Welcome back. There are so many questions for families about how COVID-19 will impact the upcoming school year. Will masks be required? That depends on where you are. Fox 43's Madeline Cudahy joins us now with a look at what some of the biggest school districts in our area are planning.
Well, Matt, right now, as Governor Wolf said, he is leaving school districts to decide what they want to do on their own in terms of masks. However, when it comes to masks on school transportation, almost all of South Central PA school districts have noted that they will follow the CDC guidance by requiring students to wear masks on school buses. The order reads in part, quote, passengers and drivers must wear a mask on public and private school buses, regardless of vaccination status. The CDC also notes that any students who forget to bring a mask on school transportation should not be disciplined. Now, while no school districts currently appear to be mandating vaccinations for staff or students ages 12 and up, most are recommending the vaccines and providing detailed information about masking and social distancing in school buildings. So let's take a broad look at some of the areas your kids may be in school and their current masking requirements. So let's start in York County. Now, this is where masks would be optional optional, but of course required on transportation. Dover, Eastern York, Hanover, Northern York, Dallastown, West Shore, and several others. Now, let's move over to Lancaster. Now, masks are required in school and on transportation in the school district of Lancaster right now. Masks are optional but required on transportation in Elizabethtown, Manheim, Hempfield School District, Penn Manor, and Lampeter Strasburg, and several others. Moving on to Dauphin County, masks are required in Steelton, Highspire, and Harrisburg school districts. Meanwhile, masks are optional but required on transportation in Susquehanna Township, Derry Township, Lower Dauphin, Middletown, Central Dauphin, and others. Now, notably, Harrisburg said they are still considering the transportation mask guidance, and they said they only may require masks on buses. Finally, let's head to Lebanon County. Masks are optional but required on transportation in Cornwall, Lebanon, Eastern Lebanon, Lebanon School District, Northern Lebanon, and several others. Now, districts have posted their health and safety plans on their websites, and many school boards have said while their plans have been adopted, they are subject to change pending any legal mandates. Now, we'll continue to follow all of those changes on air and online. We have a full list of those areas and additional counties as well right now on fox43.com. Madeline Cudahy, Fox 43 News.
Getting a COVID-19 vaccine appointment was hard to come by when the FDA gave emergency use authorization for the 12 to 17-year-old age group earlier this year. Then demand waned a bit. Fox 43's Jackie DeTore explains how the Delta variant, along with kids going back to school, is increasing the interest in teen vaccines once again.
So this is the time when children are coming to our practices for those school physicals, their annual checkups, and that's a great time for them to talk to their provider about getting a vaccination.
Dr. Christopher Russo, the director of pediatrics for WellSpan Health, says vaccines for teenagers, including the COVID-19 shot, can now be done at a regular checkup.
It used to be thought that there needed to be a waiting time between vaccines, but after more study, the CDC has recommended that there be no waiting time between vaccinations.
And there are plenty of appointments for those who are eligible. While there has been a lot of talk about vaccinating kids younger than 12, it's still unclear when it will be their turn.
When that happens, we've already begun the preparations for that to be able to give vaccines to that population as soon as it becomes available.
Dr. Russo says some school districts have reached out to WellSpan to start some vaccine clinics for students, although nothing is set in stone just yet. Jackie DeTore, Fox 43 News.
Doctors are strongly recommending that students who are eligible to receive a COVID-19 vaccine, so that those are older than 12 and above, get one before the start of the school year. They aren't, however, requiring it. The same cannot be said about a number of other shots. By the time they start kindergarten, children are required by the State Department of Health to have received full doses of the following vaccines: polio, hepatitis B, chickenpox, DTaP for diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis, and the MMR shot for measles, mumps, and rubella.
All of these vaccines that are out right now have been tested for years and years and years. We have great data. We know they are safe. We know they're extremely effective, and that's why we use them.
There are some exemptions, though. The Department of Health allows for people to opt out due to medical reasons and religious beliefs, as well as some ethical convictions. In those cases, individual school districts can still exclude a child from school if there is an outbreak. As students prepare for class this fall, here are some ways to help them build better back-to-school habits. Start adjusting the clock for an earlier bedtime. Keep hand sanitizers and, if necessary, masks in an easy-to-grab place. Research shows we're more likely to remember something if it's in a convenient location. To boost focus, set up a variety of workspaces for schoolwork so that your student can experience a change of scenery. Lastly, set a good example for your children by also adopting good habits. So if you want them to read instead of watching TV, pick up a book yourself.
Well, it certainly is a challenge. It's a challenge for the school bus industry.
School districts have more than a couple tough decisions for within the classroom ahead of the school year, but they'll also have to overcome issues outside of the class as well. Coming up, how administrators are preparing for school amid a bus driver shortage. And even during a normal year, heading back to school can be pretty nerve-wracking for students. Later this hour, how experts say you can help your student transition back to the classroom more easily. Welcome back. Boarding the bus to school has not been the same since the COVID-19 pandemic began. School districts not only have to make tough decisions on social distancing and masks, they also have to overcome issues of finding enough drivers. Fox 43's Jamie Bittner explains the preparations for the first day of school.
I am going to school.
For Matthew Brown, kindergarten is around the corner.
Different class, same school.
For his 6-year-old brother, Aaron, it's off to
first grade.
Before they strap on those brand new backpacks at York Country Day School,
This one's Matthew's, this one's mine.
they're flipping through the final days of summer and playing hero.
Superman is looking for bad guys.
As another type of hero is suiting up to sit behind the wheel and drive into a second year of hurdles caused by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Corny as it might sound, we do think of ourselves as community heroes because we do need to get those kids to and from school, and somebody has to do it.
Steve Hoffmaster is one of the nearly 43,000 licensed school bus drivers in Pennsylvania.
I've been driving school bus for 14 years.
He's also the assistant safety director for Royer Buses, so he's well aware of the problem companies are facing in hiring enough drivers, especially because many of the people who want the job fall into that high-risk group.
Sometimes it's retirees who just want to get out of the house and do something for a couple hours a day.
It's a challenge for the school bus industry, but the shortage isn't new to us. The shortage of drivers has been going on nationwide for years. So this year actually isn't really that different for us than any other year.
And for drivers, there is a lot to think about. Last year, at the height of COVID-19, they had to consider things like masks and social distancing when students took a seat on the bus. This year, many of them are still waiting on districts to decide what they're going to do and what rules students have to follow while on board. And that means every driver will have to follow every rule from every individual school district, depending on where students live.
The districts will be the ones who dictate what safety precautions they choose to use or not use.
Royer serves around 20 districts, and it was able to hire around 120 drivers last year. In total, it has around 900 part-time drivers on staff. It always needs more, though.
We're looking for people who are kind.
Aaron was the only one on the bus last year, but this year it'll be Aaron and Matthew.
Mom Jennifer Brown said the biggest adjustment last year was the addition of masks.
We didn't really have too many issues, right?
Another school year that the Browns hope will go smoothly.
Their private school is requiring masks this year.
So both kids get to school without any problems.
It's going to be a new experience for Matthew. So he's excited to get back to his friends.
Jamie Bittner, Fox 43 News.
Ask them what you're worried about, what are you concerned about, and then, go from there.
Back to school can be a stressful time of year. Coming up, how experts say you can help your children mentally prepare for the return to the classroom. And still ahead, high school sports teams were learning on the fly this time a year ago, how they're using those experiences heading into a new season after the break. Welcome back to Booksmart. Headed back to school often brings a flood of emotions, not to mention those first day jitters. But how do you manage all of that on top of the uncertainty of COVID-19? Fox 43's Brianna Gallagher spoke with some professionals who have advice on how to make the transition easier.
Class is back in session. And through all the excitement of a new school year comes new concerns for students and parents. This year, some kids may need help getting back into the swing of things. That includes seeing friends and being social again after a year of virtual learning and isolation.
Ask them what you're worried about, what are you concerned about, and then, go from there.
If a parent feels their child is struggling with social anxiety, Dr. Melissa Brown, a licensed psychologist, says the best way to check in is simply talking about what could be bothering them. Brown also says some kids may feel embarrassed to open up, and it's important to let them know that these feelings are normal.
I think for kids, it is a struggle because, so much of their being is just being social and being connected. And I always remind them, just kind of fall back onto those basic skills that you were taught kindergarten or younger, and, ask someone, hey, do you want to play? What do you like to play? And just starting to reintroduce yourself.
Solita Day, a social worker, says emotional check-ins should happen daily, especially with younger kids.
Some things that we had to review with the children were how to play with one another. They've spent so much time in isolation with siblings or by themselves that they don't always remember the norms for playing with one another.
Psychologists say parents don't need to do all the work, and it's important for students to check in with their friends as well.
I always encourage having those conversations with each other, like checking in on your friend, like, hey, buddy, what's up? I noticed that you're sitting alone at lunch and you usually join us. Like, what's happening? And, can I help you? Can I support you?
Brown says though conversations can be harder with teens, and if parents fear something may be wrong, they can recognize it through different behaviors connected to their child's sleep or appetite.
What are those looking like? Are they a big shift for them? Are they, usually bounce out of bed and all of a sudden they're dragging and they're not wanting to get out of bed and they're sleeping so much? Or in any changes in appetite. And this is why I say whatever's departure from normal for them is, whether it's over or under.
Brown says it's crucial for parents to help their kids get reacclimated with social skills. It's also important to stay positive and try to understand what they're going through.
Be kind. You never know what another person is going through. So be kind.
Brianna Gallagher, Fox 43 News.
The pandemic altered the lives of many children, and it has been especially hard on families who have children with disabilities. Some went months with no services at all. Many lost in-person support all year. However, as Fox 43's Amy Lutz shows us, that wasn't every student's reality.
So Spot had on her big wig. Very good. Write the word wig.
Ella Geip is a 10-year-old attending 5th grade at Shell Elementary School in Cumberland County.
We did have the option to go virtual all year if we chose, but we decided not to. She benefits much more with in-person learning.
Her mom, Lisa, said even with school in session, Ella still missed out on a number of therapies that were offered in school pre-pandemic.
All of those went virtual last year. So that was very trying. So we were so thankful that we went back in person. I mean, we made it do, but it was very frustrating.
She isn't alone. A May 2020 survey of 1,600 parents by advocacy group Parents Together showed that only 20% of respondents said their children were receiving some special education services, and 39% reported receiving no services at all. By summer 2020, a larger poll showed that more than 80,000 secondary and upper elementary students with disabilities may have also been facing more mental health challenges than their peers. And in fall 2020, several school districts reported sharp spikes in the number of their students with disabilities failing their classes. Sherry Landis works with ARC of PA, a nonprofit which helps people with disabilities. She says connecting families with support and resources has definitely been more limited due to COVID-19.
But we have our concerns. I mean, it's difficult for the districts. And it's extremely difficult for the individuals and the families receiving the service.
The biggest problem, she says, is a lack of paraprofessionals or trained aides that assist teachers in classes.
And the school districts are experiencing, the same shortages as many other businesses and industries in the state. We need paraprofessionals. We need special education teachers. There was a special education shortage before the pandemic, and this has just made it worse.
Luckily for the Geips, they haven't felt that pinch in the Cumberland Valley School District.
I'm thankful we're in the school district that we are in because they've recognized the importance of in-school learning, not just for children with a developmental disability like Ella, but for all the kids, especially at the elementary school age.
Sherry admits not everyone has been as lucky as Ella, and there's a lot of ground that needs to be made up.
School districts understand that this is a population of students that really need that extra support. And so we're hoping that they work with the families in order to get that for all the students.
Excellent job answering those questions, Ella.
Amy Lutz, Fox 43 News.
When the bell sounds at the end of each school day, some students gear up for after-school sports. And like any game, coaches and players can learn from their mistakes when it comes to COVID. As Alex Colley tells us, that's helping them all move forward into a new season.
We haven't played any plays and we're already being asked to punt.
And I obviously want to have as close to a normal season as possible.
The biggest mistake we would make is if we didn't try.
We've all heard the sports cliche of taking a season game by game, but in 2020, even that at times seemed too big picture.
You had a fever today? Kids were faced with different obstacles on a daily basis and sometimes on an hourly basis.
Coaches tried to find the teaching moments in everything.
You know, you're invincible, nothing bad is ever going to happen, you always can overcome things. And the possibility that their football season may not have been there. Every opportunity you get, you have to take advantage of.
School districts had to have a game plan in place even before returning to the weight room last year. And as COVID variants continue to pop up, teams enter the 2021-2022 school year reverting to that game plan that helped them before.
We got to be careful who we're around. When we're in the classroom, try to stay away from people. We wore a mask last year, so we've got to keep doing that this year.
Wanting to follow all the guidelines that was in place, respect those and take those very serious, but at the same time, find a way for us to, still find some normalcy, have fun.
2020 taught many about new alternatives that can help students progress, even if they're not on the field or in the classroom.
We film everything in Zoom meetings, so it's kind of like the NFL allowed us to understand what Zoom and Google Meets were, and you can get some things done there.
Coaches throughout District 3 know what student athletes went through as they witnessed it firsthand. So something as simple as acknowledging that and keeping it in mind as a new season draws near can be helpful.
You could tell that they were just mentally drained. And that was one of the things that we really went through as a coaching staff and thought about, like, hey, we can't come in here hot and just yelling and screaming. It's not fair to them, and that's just not the right mentality. I want to have fun. I want these guys to appreciate it, and that's what they're doing.
Alex Colley, Fox 43.
To continue their education or not? And if so, where? The pandemic only adds stress to a series of already difficult choices high school seniors have to make. Coming up, how teachers and administrators are helping their seniors prepare to make those decisions. For high school seniors, many have an eye on continuing education beyond their diploma. Trade school or college, commute or live on campus, stay close to home or go far away. These are just a few of the many questions kids face. Big decisions at any time, let alone during a pandemic. Fox 43's Victoria Lucas talked to the people who help students make those choices.
College is just 1 year away, and for some high school seniors, the thought of it brings on many emotions.
If you can tell me in one word how you are feeling about going into your last and final year of high school.
I would say excited, but also nervous.
School officials hope seniors can focus on the positive aspects of what's to come.
We always look back and say college was the best 4 years of your life. So hopefully they'll have that same experience that a lot of us were able to experience.
College prep can be stressful during normal times, let alone during a pandemic. Administrators at the School District of Lancaster want to ensure their students feel ready.
We have staff who are there to help with college applications, FAFSA for the financial aid pieces, to do college trips and events.
And colleges are also trying to help. Dickinson College will provide test-free opportunities to help students who may not have had opportunities to receive testing.
We believe that testing gives you an element of information, but it really doesn't discern whether or not you are college ready.
While the pandemic has not made the road to college smooth, Tennyson says she trusts things will improve from the experience.
People will kind of have more of an understanding of how to fully reach students as well as they did when they were in person.
Victoria Lucas, Fox 43 News.
Back to school shopping can get expensive, and even though there's sometimes no way to get around it, there are always ways to make it a little cheaper. Coming up, ways you can save and even make money while doing your back-to-school shopping. Welcome back. Back-to-school shopping is expected to cost families even more than before, and finding those supplies is not easy this year. Fox 43's Jackie DeTore finds out how you can still save and even make money while shopping for your kids.
The National Retail Federation expects families to spend an all-time high of $37.1 billion on school supplies. On average, families with children in elementary school through high school will spend roughly $848. That's $59 more than last year. College students and their families will spend an average of $1,200, and that's on everything from college swag to textbooks. And that's an increase of $141 from last year. So Fox 43 finds out how you can make money on your shopping this year instead.
Here's how you can get paid to do a little online shopping.
If you scroll through TikTok, you may have seen this face before. This is Kirsty Turok, the coupon hunter.
People are out here paying for toothpaste. People are out here paying for shampoo and conditioner. And I'm able to help people.
She's been couponing since the 2008 recession and says pretty much prices of everything have gone up and have been crazy lately.
I was going to go coupon a pack of diapers. It was previously $31.99 last week, and this week it's $34.99. I mean, that's a huge price increase overnight.
An economics professor at Elizabethtown College says this is a good thing for the economy and a bad thing for our wallets.
In fact, we're growing and growing quite rapidly. So in these environments, typically you don't see prices going down. Moreover, they're more likely to go up.
That means you'll need to take saving measures into your own hands.
By taking 5 to 10 minutes and just looking for savings, it's going to save you money 9 times out of 10.
Although things are changing in the world of discounts.
The prices and the amounts that you see on the coupon are kind of decreasing, so it's not as high value of a coupon as it was previously.
To get the best deal, she says you need to know where to look. Instead of clipping coupons, try downloading the app for your favorite store. That way, all the coupons you need are in one place. Also look for rebate apps too. This is where you can make money.
Places like Ibotta, Fetch Rewards, those are really easy apps that pay you for doing the shopping you're normally going to do anyways.
Here's how to make it simple. Start with your list of items that you need. Then check your favorite store's app to see if they're offering any discounts for those items. And then pick one rebate app and see if they're offering any special deals too. And that is how you can end up getting paid to buy toothpaste.
Honestly, I just scroll through the rebate apps and kind of just pair things together in my head.
And we have a list of back-to-school deals. You'll find those on our website, fox43.com.
The coronavirus pandemic has changed many aspects of our lives, including how schools operate. After a year of virtual or hybrid learning, Fox 43's Chelsea Kerbler explains how some learning changes may be here to stay for years to come.
We have been pivoting for the entire 18 months.
Face masks, social distancing, and virtual learning are among the challenges schools have faced since the coronavirus pandemic began in March 2020.
We are constantly reassessing federal guidance, state and local guidance to make sure that we are remaining abreast of all of the new developments and are addressing it with our students and our families.
As schools remain on top of the ever-changing pandemic, Susquehanna Township School District Superintendent Dr. Tamara Willis tells me there are some positive takeaways from the last year and a half.
There were some learners that just did not take to the virtual setting. And so that's another reason why we're offering all three options. Some learners, however, they were able to thrive in a virtual setting.
School districts like Susquehanna Township will continue to offer students more than just the typical in-person learning model.
While we open our doors and we're encouraging families to come back, because we do kind of believe that that's probably the best model. However, we understand that families are still concerned about health and safety.
Parents can choose to have their students learn in person, by all remote access, which is where students are at home but watching the classroom in real time, or an all virtual cyber academy.
And we want to provide those opportunities because our mission is the success of every learner. So that means every model is not going to work for every learner or every family. So it's critical that we provide an array of options to our families, and we're committed to doing that.
In Susquehanna Township, Dauphin County, Chelsea Kerbler, Fox 43 News.
So as you pack your students' lunches in the coming days, maybe tie their shoes, and we hope you now feel a little bit more informed and maybe even a little reassured that everything will be okay. We want to thank you for joining us in our special edition of Fox 43 News Book Smart, Back to School in Central Pennsylvania. I'm Matt Maisel. Have a good night.